Okay, Spätzle, 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 different ways of saying it. I have German heritage. I am not fluent in German. So I know I say it wrong when I say Spätzle. It's kind of the American way of saying it, kind of easy and not really a big tongue twister. So this recipe for Spätzle, really easy. Spätzle is a fresh pasta. Some people call it a fresh German dumpling, but it's a fresh pasta, very different than the Italian pasta that we saw last week, where you have an actual dough and you roll it out. This is going to be a batter, more of a batter, something a little bit runny. And there's lots of different ways that we can make the Spätzle noodles. We are going to utilize a colander today, so I'll talk about that when I get into getting my batter done. So let's just get ready with our batter. So for my batter, I am going to need 2 eggs, a 1/4 cup of milk, plus maybe a splash more, but a 1/4 cup of milk for sure. I'm going to need a cup of flour, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of butter. So with my recipe, I'm going to fill a large pot with salted water and bring to a boil. Salted water, bring to a boil. So I have my large pot of salted water coming to a boil. It is pretty full, but I want to make sure that that's trying to come to a boil while I'm working on my batter here. This batter doesn't take too long to make, so we'll see if my water catches up by the time I'm done making my batter. Then I have in a medium bowl, mix flour, eggs, salt, and milk together. So I'm just going to mix all the other ingredients to make my batter with the exception of the butter. I'm not going to have butter in here. Butter is going to be melted at the end to coat our pasta. So let's get started here. I'm just going to do my dry ingredients first. One cup of flour, my 1/4 teaspoon salt, and I need 2 eggs. I like to crack these in a separate container. If I have to fish out shells, it's a little easier to fish them out here than everything else I got in there. It's sometimes hard to pick out a white shell that's coated, sitting behind white flour. All right, and my 1/4 cup of milk. So it says mix well so no lumps remain. So I want somewhat of a smooth batter. And it also says make sure mixture is a bit thicker than a pancake batter. So a pancake batter is nice and pourable. I guess maybe depending on what kind of pancakes you make, they could be runnier than others, but like I said, it is a batter. It's not going to be like a dough. And when I shape my pasta, I'm going to push it through a colander. So I want my batter to be thin enough to go through a colander, but not too thin that it's just going to run right through. I want it to kind of slowly drip through the colander and make those pasta shapes. So as my batter goes through the colander, I'll use my spatula to push it through, and then I'm going to hold it over my boiling water. So once it comes out, it's going to hit the boiling water. But if it kind of goes through the colander kind of slow and just plop, 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 that's going to be a lot better of a pasta shape versus your batter being so thin that by the time you pour it through, it just runs right down the bottom. It hits the boiling water, and it's probably just going to become one big pasta lump in your water. So you want to make sure, like I said, this is a little thick for me. I think I'm going to add a splash more. There are other Spätzle makers out there, different ways to get your Spätzle pasta shape. There are actual Spätzle makers, different kinds out there. That's looking better. One of them is like a large rectangle that has holes in it, and then there's a little box that slides over the holes. So you put it over the boiling water, and then you put your batter in the little box and then slide the box over, and it falls through the holes. So that's kind of an easy way to do it. There's just a ricer, so a ricer where you can put your batter into like this little cup that has holes, and then you have like a plunger that goes over the top and pushes the dough or batter through the ricer. That's another form of it. I've done lots of different ways. The colander way it's easy, it's accessible. A lot of people have a colander. I mean, I got this one at the dollar store if you don't have a colander. But a little bit more accessible. We don't have to have any fancy equipment, but there is fancy equipment out there to get Spätzle done. All right. So, like I said, a little thicker than pancake batter. So as it goes through the colander, it should go through somewhat slow, but not so slow. We're going to be here all day, but it won't just run through like water. So let's take a look. I still have some time for my water to come to boil. It is not to a boil yet, so I'm going to use my time well and get caught up on some dishes and get cleaned up a little bit. I'll be back when my water's boiling. All right, water's boiling, and I have my batter colander. I put a plate under there because I am going to have to pour this batter and then move it quickly over here. So what I will do is pour my batter into here, and then, like I said, move it quickly over here. And then what I'll be doing is just kind of pushing my batter through my colander, if my camera will cooperate. Not confident. All right, let's see how this holds up. Hopefully everything won't just go swinging to one side. All right, so batter, it's gonna go in the colander, and then it's gonna go over the pot. So I'm gonna use my spatula and just push things through. This moves kind of quickly, but then my hands are just very occupied, so I'm trying to get some explaining done before my hands are super occupied. I also have to hold this colander over the pot, or I maybe can get a friend to help me. So that's usually another thing. If I have a big batch happening at home, I'll try to get somebody to hold the colander for me while I kind of push through. It can kind of be a little bit of an arm workout, because you're just kind of having to push through. There we go. And once it hits the water, the other thing that's good to have kind of a partner there around is someone to occasionally stir what's happening inside the pot as it falls. But it usually hits the water and then floats. Floating is a good indicator that it's done. But because it takes a little while to push through, you know, things will get in there and push. Things will get in there and float while you're kind of waiting to push through here. So usually it can work pretty fast. You can see how I'm kind of tilting the colander to one side because it's a lot easier to focus on just kind of pushing through the side here versus using all of the colander. So if you can kind of concentrate on just pushing stuff through one little section, it's a little easier. And then you can see my batter's gone. But before I quit, I'm gonna get all of that off the side of my colander. Then let this stuff cook a second. But I also want to strain my pasta, so I need to go over to the sink and quickly rinse out this colander, because this is kind of like a pancake batter. So if you let this sit around, this does become really stuck on and stick to everything. So I'm going to give this a quick rinse. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to rinse this so I know that my water will come out of my boiling water. All right. Like I said, just a quick rinse just to make sure that I can drain. But you can see everything is floated. Hopefully you can see those little tiny pasta dumplings I have. They're all different shapes. I call them perfectly imperfect. It's kind of the point of Spätzle. They're all different shapes. So I'm going to go drain this. And then while my pasta is draining and my pot is still hot, I'm going to add my 2 tablespoons of butter, get them melting. I want to get the bowl soaking that I had my batter in, because like I said, it's like a pancake batter. It's going to get all sticky here soon if I don't pay attention to it. So all I'm going to do is melt my butter. Like I said, I have residual heat from the pot here. It's already warm. If I want to turn the heat on to just a slight low heat, I can to help melt the butter, but it's doing a pretty good job here. And then I'm just going to add my Spätzle back in, coat it with the butter, and we're done. There's other variations of finishing Spätzle I've seen with breadcrumbs. Some people will melt butter and then put the Spätzle in and toss with breadcrumbs in like a skillet and saute it. It's another good way of doing it. But this is really classic, really simple. Then the other option I give is when you're serving this up to black pepper is really nice on top of it when you serve it up. So let me get my chicken out of the oven, and we'll plate one up and see what it looks like all together. All right. So my Spätzle, like I said, all these different shapes. It's kind of perfectly imperfect. They're all different shapes, all different sizes, but they're all separate little noodle dumplings. And then a chicken breast, your schnitzel. You could easily steam some broccoli, some corn. There's all kinds of different ways you can just simply add a vegetable to it. But super delicious. That garlic on the chicken, I'm getting aromas of that. And then the butter on the Spätzle is very delicious. So let's finish the rest of our blanks on the Spätzle recipe. Once water comes to a boil, use a colander to push the batter through the boiling water. So your third blank is boil. Once the dumplings are floating, strain off the water. Using the same hot pot, add the butter to melt and add the drained Spätzle, stir well, and season to taste. So that's when I was saying that sometimes nice dashes of pepper would work really well. But there you have it. There is the finished products together, schnitzel and Spätzle.